So today I want to talk about when you take off all that equipment and you break it down to what we have as far as what we're working with. That's our focus for today. So, things to keep in mind as I go through this presentation today. And I'm not talking about literal gear, okay, not the equipment. These are the things that you can give them as far as attributes, characteristics, and things to think about as coaches or administrators when you're dealing with girls. What gear do they have? What are they bringing with them into the locker room? It's important to know what experiences they've had, or as best you can, get a handle on what experiences they've had. What gear do they need? So what sorts of things are they lacking? Are they missing some self-esteem? Do they need some more confidence? Do they need, and this is the kind of gear that I'm talking about, not the literal gear. What gear can you offer? What do you already have in your bag of tricks? Know what you have as a coach to offer the players that you're coaching. And it's really important to have that self-awareness, that self-assessment, because those are the best kind of coaches that are really aware of what you have as your gifts, and then your best way of giving it to these kids. So there's different approaches. I'm going to talk a little bit about this, but these are the things to kind of keep in mind as we go through the idea of understanding potential for these kids. Okay. How can hockey be a vehicle for positive growth for girls? Not just to make great hockey players. How can we grow girls into phenomenal young women and make them a part of our society that is just, you know, they have that potential, again, and tapping into the potential to be great people. Boys are happy when they perform well. In order for girls to perform well, they need to be happy. I heard this several weeks ago and I thought, you know what? That's kind of true. And I've seen it kind of on the anecdotal level. When I was playing, if I was in a good place emotionally and mentally, I would play at my best prior to the game. When I would walk into the locker room, coaching the girls that I did for my at the university, I would walk in, I could tell in about 2 seconds whether they were going to be at their very best that day. It was about the mood in the room. Creating that mood, creating that feeling, creating whatever that mojo is before. For girls, it's super important that they are in a very happy place before they play. Okay, rocket science. I know no one knows this. No one thinks that girls are complex. We are. We're very complex. I'm going to talk a little bit today about how girls grow. And I'm only going to touch on it because there's a lot of people that are going to go into more depth about these things. But in order to talk about those individual keys, we kind of got to know what we're working with. What does who they are do to the dynamics in a locker room? Because of what we know about girls and the way that they're wired and the way they relate to one another, it should change what we understand of the dynamics in a locker room, and also how to create a positive environment for them. So these are some things that I'm going to go through. And then when and where can team building happen? Because this is, you have such an opportunity with this sport that you don't have with other sports. You have a locker room. And I never had a locker room for soccer or for basketball. I love the locker room, and I love going in there with my girls, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that as we go. Okay, so what are little girls made of? Sugar. Okay, my 6-year-old helped me pick that picture out. The kids really wanted to be a part of this presentation, if you can't tell. Spice. Everything nice. Yes and no. We are all of these things, and that's the one great thing and the one very complicated thing about dealing with girls. We have our ups and downs, we have our moods, we have our spiciness, we have our sugar sweetness, and we have our nice and our very mean. So we have all of this, and to try to understand the complexity of women, men, you know this, you just give up very quickly and just go about your own thing, right? The commercial is actually very perfect. You have one thing on your mind, the women are thinking all sorts of different things, and so you just kind of give up trying to understand us, and I don't blame you. I have spent my life trying to figure out how we're wired. Okay, very quickly, like I said, this is going to be something that people touch on at a much deeper level than this. The physical development of kids, the age group that we're talking about. Puberty begins for girls between the ages of 10 and 11. And this is earlier than most boys, and it rears its ugly head in all sorts of different ways. Hormones are present at the very highest levels between ages 10 and 17. So if you're dealing and coaching with these girls, I was telling somebody yesterday, I think it was Barb, I said, okay, if you're going to coach girls, really, you want to just assume that you have an entirely different team from one day to the next. And so you want to Forrest Gump your way through coaching girls this age. And what I mean by that is Forrest Gump would just kind of show up in an area and be like, oh, I'm going to run today. And he would go and run because that's what he felt like doing. If you're coaching girls, you want to show up and be like, so, how are you today and who are you today? Because really they are someone totally different from day Monday to day Wednesday. And it just recognizing and accepting, okay, I'm just going to have to be ready that I can't go with what I expected you to be like, because they are constantly changing. Their bodies begin to hold more fat, their breasts are growing, their bodies are changing, their muscles are growing. These are all physical changes that are happening to girls at this age, and it's drastic. And growth happens too. When you have a growth spurt of 1 inch and all of a sudden you are now 1 inch higher from where you were yesterday, things get awkward and you get frustrated. And it's all right that we recognize these things are happening for them, because they're not as good at things when they have this physical changes happening. And then I know no one wants to talk about this, but menstruation happens for girls at this age. And the amazing thing, when they start to live together in college and play together, they end up all on the same cycle, which that's really fun when there's all this hormonal stuff happening for 15 of them at the same time. But this is a reality, and these are things we have to remember and recognize. This is what goes on with girls. Okay, mental development, and again, real brief. Kids ages 11 to 14 are concrete thinkers. That means that they think black and white, yes and no, up and down, right and wrong. And this is important to remember, because if you even talk about the abstract concept of team, they don't get it. They don't get it. They have their job, and they know what their job is, but they have a hard time understanding that abstract concept of sacrificing for a team and doing the team thing. They can get it. I'm not saying don't teach the team concept. Absolutely teach the team concept, but understand that they don't think that way quite yet. They're getting there. They're developing that team idea. And so that comes a little bit later after they turn about 14, which is why they, trying to have that idea of equal playing time until kids are 14, it's ideal, because they don't understand anything other than that they want to play. They don't get that their role is as a bench player. They don't understand that until they're over 14 years old. So we got to keep that in mind of how their mental development affects what they do. They believe they're the center of the universe. Anyone with a 13-year-old daughter knows this. And they're just trying to understand their place in the world. This is what their minds are trying to accept and understand, and they want to figure it all out. It's confusing. It's a confusing time for them. And to know that this is hard. It's a hard time of life. We can write it off as being, those middle school years. Well, those middle school years are pretty important in their development. And it's because they're trying to figure out where they fit. Okay, girls are wired that way. That commercial honestly was so perfect for this slide. Because when we do think differently, men and women think very differently. And if there's an emotional experience or thought, what happens in a woman's brain is very different than what happens in a man's brain. They've seen it on scans. When there's an emotive response, the woman's entire brain lights up. She is processing in all sorts of places in her brain. For the men, it goes to one place, the fight or flight response. So this is, and it makes sense, because you can see that men get very directed and women have just a lot more to think about when something happens. And I'll give you kind of a locker room example. Let's say the coach says to a group of boys, all right guys, let's go get them, we're gonna go beat that team out there. The boys will stand up and they're like, yeah, totally, let's go, and that's all they're thinking about. In a girls' locker room, it could look a little bit more like this. Yeah, let's go, I know, I gotta remember I was gonna play that right wing, okay, and that's my teammate over there. I'm like, oh, she's rolling her eyes at me. What the heck, did I say something? Was I joking? No, okay, wait, I know my friends are coming. I think my friends are coming today. They're gonna be in the stands. I'm so excited I'm gonna see them. Wait, we should do our cheer, guys. We gotta do our cheer, because that's gonna get us up. Rock 'em, sock 'em. Let's go get up. That's what happens in a girl's brain, and that's what happens in a boy's brain. And it's important to know that that's the difference. It doesn't mean it's bad. It's just so that if you think that you're gonna get the girls to get up and fire like the boys do, you're not. That's not how they think. So we've got to pay attention to how their brains are wired. All right, emotional tendencies. This is that emotion piece that you talked about. This is huge. And this is something that, I think across the board you'll see these threads in some of the presentations today. Emotional growth for girls, obviously the hormonal changes will change their moods. They can be giggling uncontrollably 1 second and crying the next. And it's just the way we are. We can't explain it. It's just what happens. Friendships change their moods. They can jump in the locker room and be looking completely forlorn. It has nothing to do with hockey. It has everything to do with that friend that passed them a bad note. So these things affect their emotional growth, and if we can't help them to grow through this, it can be incredibly negative for them. So we have to pay attention to how they're emotionally growing too. They want their independence, so they do this kind of fight with their parents, like, I love you, no, I hate you, I love you, no, I hate you, I want to be by myself, and that's that teen angst and why we have so much trouble with our teenagers. And I don't have them yet, I'm terrified, I'm trying to figure out how to freeze my children exactly the ages they are. Peer relationships are their priority. Why is this important to hockey teams? Because they are their peer relationships. I spent my entire winter in a hockey rink with my kids, and they spend that entire time with their friends in that hockey rink, either the siblings of their brother and sister who are playing, or with their own teammates. They spend an inordinate amount of time with these kids. And so those relationships that they have with them, that is their social, that is their peer. All right, another very interesting fact about girls. This is a study done in 2006. Instead of just the flight or fight response, they tend to the vulnerable and work to align with the group. They want their buddies. Girls don't like to be singled out. Girls like to be part of a group. And so it's very uncomfortable for girls if they are pulled out as an example of what is bad. If they do something bad in a practice and they're pulled out and they're singled out, they hate this. Girls hate this. They like to be part of a group. They also, some are very uncomfortable being pulled out to be told they've done something well, which is really confusing for guys. Guys don't get this. They're like, no, dude, I wanted everybody to know I just did that really well. Girls don't necessarily need that. They want to be part of a group. And this is just the way that they're emotionally wired too. Okay, so getting to the coaching and specifically coaching ideas. See my soccer bias, for sure. Mia Hamm, one of my favorite players, and just people in general. She's a phenomenal example of teammate. And this was her quote for her coach. Coach us like men, but treat us like women. That's what it is. That's all it is. Hockey has its tactics. You have your strategies. You have all of the things that you need to be teaching kids how to do, but you need to treat them the way that they need to be treated. And girls have some different needs than boys. It's just the reality. So if you treat them the way that they deserve to be treated, then they will perform for you. You'll get more of their potential from them. They will enjoy their experience, and they will keep playing. Again, rocket science. Girls are more social. Yes, they are more social. I'm going to tell you a story. I had the pleasurable opportunity this year. My daughter is a goalie. See, I'm convincing myself that it's awesome. My daughter's a goalie. But she couldn't put her equipment on by herself. So I got to go into the locker room with her before all the practices and before all the games so that I could help her get her gear on. And I loved this locker room time with these little girls. They were 9, 10, and 11 years old. And I loved it. They would do the typical girl things. Hey, gotta go to the bathroom. You wanna go to the bathroom? Yeah, let's go to the bathroom. And they would get up in groups, and they would talk, and I loved it. I just loved the energy in there. We had an outdoor game that did not have a locker room, so the girls all got ready in this kind of like public area. And they were doing their locker room thing, and I'm getting my daughter ready, and hey, you wanna go to the bathroom? Yeah, I was just there, let's go. So they took their friends, and one of the dads said, how do you stand going in the locker room? This is such a waste of time. And I looked at him and I said, girl time is not a waste of time. It is so necessary for these girls to feel like hockey is important to them. They need those friendships, they need that social, and without it, hockey is nothing but a bunch of little sticks and pucks. And for them, it's got to mean a whole lot more. I also had the opportunity to talk to an Australian field hockey coach, and he has coached both men and women, and I said, all right, what's the difference between the men and the women? He said, the women need to talk a lot. So his strategy was he let them have a social time at the beginning before their practices, before their training. And on captain directive, now mind you, these are elite athletes, they would then decide, okay, our social time is done. We've made our transition from our lives to the field, we're ready to practice, and the way that he knew they were ready to go is they put their cell phones in a basket. So as soon as their cell phones were in a basket, then they were ready to play.